Hey there, super friends. It's your host, Kev, of Everything is Awesome. And just cutting into the beginning of this show, because this episode was supposed to air Friday, because we were going to do 2 episodes a week. And you know what? It all works into my favor, because consider this, on Everything is Awesome, the Week of Steele. With an extra E for entertainment, I believe is the saying. That's right. We're going to have 3 episodes this week, and they all have to do with the Steele Empire. That's right. We have, today, you're going to be hearing my interview with the DM for A Quest for Magic and Steele, an extra E for entertainment. We're going to be chatting today just about, the DM process and tabletop gaming and nerdum a little bit and just, some old-fashioned DM talk and D&D talk and stuff. Something that we haven't done in quite a while because we haven't had like a first-time guest that was a DM in quite some time. And then later this week, also from A Quest for Magic and Steele, the extra E for entertainment, is the host of the podcast, A Quest for Magic and Steele. That's right, there's a DM and a host. Their dynamic is a little bit different, which I love. And he is on Wednesday and Friday this week for parts 1 and part 2 of our conversation. It's going to be a good week, people. And guess what? It doesn't end there. We're going to have our first annual special for Everything is Awesome. That's right. I don't know how, I don't foresee doing a lot of different kinds of specials. But on the 11th, which I believe is a Thursday, we are going to be doing a Robin Williams special. And without getting too deep into this, I'll explain more when we air it, but his passing affected me greatly when he died and took his own life a few years ago. So I've always kind of wanted to do like a podcast about it, and I figured why not make it an annual special and whatnot. So check that out on Thursday. The rest of the episodes this week are all part of our Week of Steele. That's right, and it's all to celebrate the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. Make sure you check out phillypodfest.com for more details on that. And make sure, if you're in the area of Philadelphia, you go to Tattooed Moms on August 21st at 2 p.m. so you can see this guy doing the show live. And we're going to have, I don't have all my official announcements ready for you, but it's going to be a late night type show in the afternoon. We're going to have Mike D'Angelo from Tellus fame as my right-hand man, my Ed McMahon, if you will. If you want to go, I guess, to a current generation, my Andy Richter, my Steve Higgins. He's going to be my right-hand man for the show. And, of course, we're going to have a stand-up comedian at the end of the show. And that man, who's going to bring the funny, besides myself, of course, is going to be the one, the only, Garrett Smith, first-time guest of this show, longtime friend of mine, and a stand-up comedian in the Philadelphia area. So, we're looking good, and I'm hoping on Wednesday to have our official guest announcement for our last guest that we're booking. All right, without me babbling on anymore, on to the show as we begin the Week of Steele. Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Your... okay, wow, I already screwed up. That's the first time I think I screwed up my intro. Take 2.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. This week's guest, this episode 26. Last week we celebrated with episode 25 because that's a milestone. But 26 is also kind of a big milestone when it comes to podcasts, because if you're a weekly podcast, that's the 6-month anniversary, halfway to 52, which is the big 1-year show. And this one is also kind of, and I'm spoiling it because this is going to air before the other episode, but it is the first quote-unquote family reunion that we have on the show. It's the first time that we have someone that's been related to someone else that's been on the show before. And we'll get into that in just a bit. She's a storyteller, which I mean, I guess we'll find out more from her what she classifies as herself, because we had a brief conversation about her podcast and her role in it. But I would say storyteller and voice actress with many voices. Welcome to the show. I didn't confirm this. I'm going to assume I'm right. Amara Steele.
Amara, and Steele is just our kind of
fake
logo,
name.
fake name, yeah. So
Yeah.
you can go by Amara Steele. That's fine.
Yeah, no, that's I mean that's how I introduced your dad. Which, so we're doing this. If I guess in the world of geekdom, like we are, I guess both in. If you're a D&D fan, this would be a prequel episode because next week is when we're going to actually air your dad's 2-part episode.
Okay.
So we're doing things a little out of order, but that's because I figure I'm going to try to keep this one to an hour because so for the month of August, because we're leading into the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, we're doing 2 episodes a week for this month. So this is our second episode for week 1 of August. Last week, as everyone knows, and this is going to make much more sense to nobody. It doesn't even make sense to me because I haven't recorded it yet. But last week's guest was Batman. That was awesome. So I'm sure it was awesome. I'm going to assume it was awesome. But yeah, so you are the DM. Your podcast, A Quest for Magic and Steele, is such a weird dynamic as far as like a D&D tabletop RPG podcast goes. Everything in my experience has been with those type of shows, the DM's also the host, but the way it runs, at least the way I hear it, is you're the DM, but your dad is kind of like the front man, the host of the actual podcast portion.
Yeah, pretty much. He's just has a lot more experience with recording himself and just talking in general. He's been a DJ for a bunch of things and everything like that. So he just has the voice of a host. So it's a little easier for him to kind of do it. There's a couple episodes that I have kind of chimed in, but I feel more comfortable with him doing it. So that's just how it was. It just kind of set up like that. I have more experience in D&D than he does, though. So. Yeah,
well, no, and that's the other cool dynamic of the show is that, and without, I guess, I mean, we may spoil stuff. I don't really. I got really drunk during that interview, and so I forget like the latter half of it, but. What I do remember is like at some point during the interview was like I said it like it was revealed that you were all family playing, and that's when like your show became so much more. so I guess I'm spoiling that factoid, but I'm not spoiling my reaction because my reaction was off the charts when that was revealed during your dad's interview.
That's awesome.
It really did. It really kind of changed how I viewed that show. Not that I viewed it any negatively before. It was just like, all right, well, this is a show that I'll listen to. And instantly knowing that little fact for whatever reason, it turned it into a show. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to listen to it within 48 hours of it releasing because it just made it more enjoyable. I don't know why. I just think it's, I guess, adorable for lack of a better word.
I'm pretty sure in one of the beginning episodes that we started, we actually had said that we are all family. Well, not all of us, but most of us in general. Like my dad is in it, myself, and I have 4 younger siblings, but only 2 of them other than myself are in it. It's my younger brother and my younger sister. And then I had my boyfriend kind of join along as well, because I know him and I are better at D&D than my family. Like we've always played, well, I mean, we only started maybe a couple years ago, but we have more experience than my family does. So we kind of brought it into that. And then later on in the episodes, we actually had my other friend join because she's really good at just like making characters, and she's actually DM'd before I did. This is actually my first time DMing a campaign with this podcast.
So let's. This is a better conversation with you than with your dad about D&D. We can go into, you have years of history versus, your dad who's just, I assume, just started playing with the podcast, right? If I remember correctly.
Well, I actually started out with a just kind of, there was a basic like introduction D&D campaign box that I had brought home, and I kind of DM'd that a little bit for them. So he had a little bit of taste with that. But I mean, the podcast, he had a little bit of idea already, so it wasn't too bad.
So where's your origin story for tabletop RPG? How, like, you said you've been playing for a couple of years, like what brought you into that world?
Well, I was never too much into tabletop gaming in high school. I would mostly just play video games, so I wasn't used to playing board games or anything like that, but basic like Monopoly and everything with my family. But my friend actually went to college up in North New York, and he met a bunch of friends there, and they actually play D&D. So when he came back for the summer after his first semester, he actually got me and my boyfriend to start a campaign with him, because his one friend that he is really close to still actually DM'd for him a lot. And my friend, he's a really great storyteller, so he does an amazing job as a DM. So he brought us into this, and we kind of like set off from there. Once we started playing D&D, we kind of continued over the years, and we've kind of made a pact where we're not ever going to stop. It's just so much fun. And we've done like little other tabletop games here and there that we play every once in a while, like basic board games. We have a couple friends that we hang out with, so it's a lot of fun.
So you start, I guess, like for our, well, I mean, I'm probably in a different generation than you, but for a lack of a better term, our generation, like for me, I started off with video games as well. Were you like RPG video games, like the Final Fantasy stuff, or were you, what kind of video games did you start off like playing?
I don't really remember exactly where I started. I know my dad and my mom always liked to play kind of like the Mario kind of games, and my dad was a really big PC gamer, so he played a lot of like Call of Duty games and everything like that. So we'd always watch him play those. And then I started, I guess, playing probably on PlayStation 2. I actually bought my own when I was, I don't know, probably like 7 or 8 maybe. And I started playing those kind of games on there, just kind of one-player story mode. And definitely Final Fantasy was one of the games that I first started with. So it was definitely...
So what is your Final Fantasy?
Well, I first started out with Final Fantasy VII, and I actually played that a lot with my cousin. We always hung out together when we were younger, so we were almost inseparable. But he played a lot of the video games, and I would like kind of watch, but I would take control every once in a while just to kind of see how it went and everything. And yeah, that's pretty much where it started. I didn't play much of Final Fantasy X, which is a shame. I did play that a little bit because my boyfriend was more into that when I started dating him than I was. So I actually borrowed the game from him and started playing it more. My mom didn't really like the art of the game, so I wasn't really allowed to have them.
That's true, because for me, by the time Final Fantasy VII and all those later versions hit, I mean, I was probably 16 or something. I was old enough to buy my own versions of Final Fantasy, and my parents really, I mean, they were of a generation of Atari, so they didn't really care.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, I guess, Final Fantasy VII. Did you ever go back and play the past Final Fantasies or no?
I played Crisis Core. I kind of dabbled a little bit. I've just kind of seen little things here and there of before Final Fantasies, but I've never really fully played any of them.
Yeah. So this is the good generation barrier I'm familiar with. my one of my best friends, his younger brother, the way we know we're from different generations is whenever Final Fantasy VII came out, that's the games that you guys started playing. For us, it was Final Fantasy. I guess in the States it was called 3, but it's Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah.
With Kefka as the main villain, and to us, to my generation, that's the best Final Fantasy story because I've literally been playing Final Fantasy. I mean, I think I was probably too young to actually play Final Fantasy 1 when it first came out, but there was, by the time I was old enough to play games and have like a memory of them, regular Nintendo was still a thing. And Super Nintendo was not out. So I was playing Final Fantasy probably like in its second generation of releases.
Okay.
So I've been like, and that's like it's my favorite series of video games. I think even though they all tend to have crappy endings, and it's something that like, for whatever reason, once I got past 6 and started on 7, I never finished a Final Fantasy because they're all, even 7 I don't mind. I think it's good, but I don't think it's as good as 6. And there's always a point in 7, like on disc 3, that I was like, you know what, I'm going to start over because I don't like what happened. And it was every single time.
Oh my goodness.
So I've started in my adult life. I think I'm on Final Fantasy 5 Advanced, that was re-released on the Game Boy. I like one of the bucket list items as an adult with kids, a grown man with kids, is to play all the Final Fantasy games from start to finish. I'm on 5 of, I think there's 13 now.
Oh yeah, there's a lot, and 13 has like 4 different gameplays of it, so it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I heard like the only one I remember talking about was, I guess it's the one that's very linear and it's very, quote unquote, I guess boring. It's like one of the most boring Final Fantasies, where you just like, you can't go backwards until you get like to a little section of open world, and then it goes back to linear after you decide to leave that open world section. From what I heard, I don't really know because again, I'm on 5.
Yeah. I know a lot of the newer Final Fantasy games I just love because of the animation and everything. And I just love the pictures of it and some of the characters in it. But yeah, I guess I never finished 13. I started their first game and then my boyfriend bought me the second game, but I never got to finish the first one. I kind of just stopped. I think it was boring. I never really thought about it though.
Yeah, Final Fantasy has that rap though for like having like bad endings. Like it's really good, and then like the last like, at least up until 6. I haven't finished anything after 6, but every game before that, like Final Fantasy 2 in the States, which is really 4, was like that. I really like that was a game where, kind of like you mentioned earlier, where like me and my friends would sit around playing it, but like my friends would play it, I would have the instruction manual because back in the day manuals were actually like pretty thick, and like had like a mini strategy guide in the back of it, and like I would sit there and like kind of like read that, you have to go here, you have to go there, or whatever, like help guide them. And that's when Final Fantasy 3/6 came out, they introduced like multiplayer as far as battle system was concerned. So you could have 2 people playing the characters in your party. Which sounds stupid now, but like back then blew your mind. Wow, you're the first guest that made me feel old, so thank you.
I'm so sorry. Well, I'm only 22, so I haven't really.
So we have a decade between us.
Yeah.
That's what it is. All right, so that led to D&D, which is for me a very similar story. I mean, that's I think, and probably is a similar story for most of like the late Gen Xers / millennials, and then of course millennials, because D&D and tabletop in general has had a resurgence in like the last 5 years, it feels like. Have you toiled with any other game systems besides D&D?
Like the tabletop kind of games, like
for RPG. Yeah, so like I'm gonna go with no based off that response.
I have gone. I started out with Pathfinder. Well, no, actually, I started out with 3.5. And I mean, it's kind of similar to Pathfinder and 5th edition, but I mean, those were pretty much the stuff that I played around with. There was another type of game. Nemesis, I want to say.
Yeah, I'm not. That one, I'm not. That one doesn't sound familiar. Yeah, I recently through podcasting, like before, I'd say I think February was when I was on this show, Party of One podcast. Who they were originally supposed to be on before you at the Philadelphia Pod Fest, but he moved back to Friday night. He's actually opening the fest Friday night at the comic book store. But his podcast is like it's a 2-player RPG, and they make a ton of tabletop games that are just for 2 players. And then there's some that aren't, and he modifies them. But when I was a guest on his podcast, like I had to find a tabletop game, and I was like, well, I guess they make something else besides Dungeons and Dragons. So like literally 5 months ago, I the only thing I knew was D&D and Pathfinder, and then obviously the different versions of D&D. But going into like the podcasting world of tabletop, there's like so many, and one of the most fascinating ones that I think a DM, and I guess it depends on the type of DM you are, but if you're really into the storytelling aspect versus like combat and roles, Dungeon World relies heavily, like they favor storytelling over the like rolling and stuff in their system. It's actually a really fascinating system that I've read up and studied on. I haven't had a chance to play myself, but I've listened to plenty of podcasts that play it, and it's a suggestion for you and your group if you ever want to play something different, is I would suggest Dungeon World.
Okay, yeah, I've never heard of Dungeon World, so that would definitely be something that I'd have to look up and get more information on it first, but it sounds pretty cool. I mean,
yeah, it's weird. Like I think it uses I guess it uses more than 6-sided die, but like it's all based like as the DM, as you're playing, if it's you and like 3 other characters and you take them to a city, you would say, all right, we're at this city, yada, yada. The big monument, why is that important to you, your character? And like so the player characters help form the story.
okay.
It's just a really fascinating thing. If this podcast Too Cool for Tabletop, their first like I think 10 episodes it's various game systems, but a lot of it is a majority of them are Dungeon World. So like if you want to hear a good like a good podcast that plays that system, look at the early episodes of Too Cool for Tabletop. It's fascinating.
Cool. Yeah, it definitely sounds cool. So I need to look it up.
So what led you to become the DM? I guess just the most experienced one of the group.
Yeah, so it was pretty much my dad really, really wanted to start doing a podcast. And he wasn't really sure where to start. He didn't know what we should have in the podcast or anything like that. We've had a couple different ideas of different kinds of podcasts to do. We were going to try doing like a weekly entertainment segment where we'd just spurt out anything that was fun during the week that we played or watched movies or anything like that, or just a information segment where we just kind of talk about politics and news and everything like that. But we haven't really figured out how to go about doing that yet. And I know he started listening to this one D&D podcast group, Adventure Zone, I think it was called.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one that he recommended to me.
So he started listening to them, and he knew that I was really good, or I've played D&D so much, and with the couple of times that I've played with him and my brother and my sister, he just liked it a lot. So we decided to start doing that, and I don't know, I guess because it's kind of like me and my dad's thing, I decided to kind of DM it. And I've always kind of wanted to do, or DM a campaign. So it's helped.
And it's something like, and I don't know if it was just the way the story's gone, but like, I had to binge your show because I caught it, probably I think you guys were like 12 weeks or 12 episodes out when I started listening to it, and I eventually caught up. But it definitely, it sounds like maybe, I don't know if it's, I want to call it your storytelling technique. I guess it's just you on the mic. You like week 1 compared to now is like, there's improvement's the wrong word. Timid to willing to talk is what I'll say. Like and I don't know if that was just how like a personality thing, or if that's just the way you were playing the game and getting used to doing it in front of a microphone. But it was a fascinating binging listening into it and seeing the involvement of everyone's character, or not even character, just everyone's personality.
So I am getting a little better at it then.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. You definitely, it's like you've opened up more. Like it started off as like quiet and timid, which is, if I can imagine as just a D&D player, most of us aren't the most outgoing people.
Yeah.
Usually a shy person is someone that's going to be involved with, or I guess a shy quality is that of D&D players. And when you're not hosting the podcast, like you're not forced to be front and center.
Yeah.
So you've definitely worked your way to that point, which is, as a listener, and I kept probably even more as like a podcaster, like seeing that evolution or hearing that evolution is like neat to see. I don't know if anyone else picks up on it. And the one thing that I think is, and I don't listen to a lot of tabletop RPGs because I only find the ones that I really like and I stick with them. And not a lot of them do a lot of voices, like especially the player characters. The DM usually is forced to because there's so many NPCs, but not to the extent that you do. And the player characters definitely not the extent to what your dad does. Which I think is fascinating. My favorite is the little old Jewish lady, like that sounds like Estelle from Friends. From when you went behind the waterfall.
Yes, the Maggie Morta, I forget what I called her right now, but yeah, my hey, you guys get back there, go back from behind the door, go bring me a pack of cigarettes.
Yep, that was
when I first started this. I mean, my dad had talked about starting a campaign and doing a podcast, and I really wasn't sure where I was going to go at all. I'm still kind of creating the story as I go. I know a lot of people, especially DMs, they like to have it all written out and everything like that, but I know from past experience with my boyfriend and everything being in campaigns, when we're together, we mostly flip whatever the DM has in store for us. We never were on track with what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I've just kind of come to the conclusion of not laying out what's going to happen. It's just kind of like I have a general line of where I want it to end, but everything in between is just kind of going to go how it goes. So.
And I think for like games that are run as a podcast, I've noticed that trend. Now, maybe it's hard to tell because the one podcast I listen to, they kind of do every now and then, they do like a behind the scenes bonus episode, and they've kind of said that like they have a detailed story so far out, and then it gets to a certain point where like, well, I don't know how the players are gonna react, so let me just have kind of a couple forks in the road that might happen, and then I'll deal with it when I get to that. But like my group, we record, but no one but me and the DM were into the idea of doing it as a podcast. So we record our DM session or our D&D sessions, but I've only released one episode, and because no one else is into it, it's very like the DM, he's like, before I started playing, he showed me all his notes. He's got it like you said, where it's all like he's got a long story planned out. To which when I started playing, I said, I'm gonna fuck with that, right? Like it's not by the way, this is a podcast. I know your podcast is family friendly, so listeners of Empire Quest for Magic and Steele, this isn't family friendly. This one, this one curses a little bit. Just an FYI. But yeah, I told him, I was like, I'm going to mess with you, and which is actually like part of the plan, because it's a whole detailed thing that I don't think I can reveal yet, because this will air while we're still in our campaign. So
Okay.
But and other people listen to it, obviously, the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's as the player character, that I think is it took me years to find a group that it worked with, like where I could have fun with it, but it was still taken seriously, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we tried in high school, like one of our teachers set up a D&D group, and it didn't pan out at all. And then like one other time in our late teens, early 20s, and it didn't pan out. And like finally in my 30s, like I guess we started playing when I was 31. Like everyone took it serious. Well, my first good experience was Party One podcast. We played a Doctor Who role-playing game, and it was taken seriously, but with a lot of fun. And that opened me up to like, all right, well, maybe if I like improv and do role-playing instead of just sitting there saying I hit the guy with a sword, I'll have fun with it. And that's where we're at now in our group.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of say, I know whenever I play D&D with my friends, it's kind of basically the same. Like we would kind of be like, I'm gonna do this attack, and then the DM would describe how they went on about killing the person or doing their role. So our characters never really role-played that much. We would role-play a little bit if we had to do like a persuasion or anything like that, but it really wasn't that much role-playing. Now, doing the podcast, especially like my sister's awesome. Shayna, she definitely makes her character, and it just makes the group so, it just makes it so much fun. But the way she plays it, it's just, I'm so glad that she's there. So she kind of acts out the character a lot more than she probably would have if we weren't doing the podcast. So it definitely has a different atmosphere when we are recording the podcast than actually playing just D&D on a table out mics.
Yeah, and it's which is interesting. I guess it's all based off of personality and whatnot, because the group that we're in, that I'm in, we finally like they know the mic's there, but no one except for maybe me is like acting up because of the mic. And I like the one thing, like they kind of did improv and role play, but not to the extent that like the whole goal of me kind of coming in was to enforce that, because I'm not a fan of when a scene's just kind of fast forward, like, hey, we got to walk from building A to building B. Let's just go there.
Yeah. Or
from setting A to setting B. I like, and this is something that Dungeon World kind of introduced me to, and that was like, let's role play the scene. Let's if there's a, like, especially for my character, I joined in the middle of a campaign, so there's plenty of character building opportunities. So anytime that there's really good role playing, which you guys, I mean, I don't know if it's how it's edited, but like your show is pretty tight on how like there's a lot of role playing from all angles. Obviously, it sounds like the people that aren't familiar with D&D as much are in, like, do the role playing a lot more than, and I
think it's just like a personality thing. Like my brother, he doesn't really know anything about D&D, but he's pretty shy, so he doesn't really know how to play his character, and he hasn't really done anything like that before. So he has a little difficulty with it. Now, my boyfriend's really experienced with D&D. We've played for at least 4 or 5 years, and so he knows how to play a character, but he's not really the type of person that likes to act out very much. He's the kind of person that just kind of explains, I'm going to roll this die. Oh, look, I got a D20. Now I'm going to spin around and do this and then chop this guy's head off. But he's not going to acted out as a player. He's gotten a little bit better with. I mean, his character in Steel Empires is kind of like a one-liner kind of guy anyway, so it works out.
No, it's a good like the way everyone interacts with one another. It works out. It totally works out. I enjoy it at the very least.
Yeah, my one friend Lisha too. She has played D&D just as long as we have too, and she just likes she's a really good actor too. So she definitely. I'm glad that I brought her into the podcast because she helps me push the story along, especially with her experience because she has DM'd campaigns before. She kind of knows when I want something to happen or when I want the other guys to be pushed into doing something else, and she kind of helps act that out. So it definitely
I think every DM needs someone like that in a group that is either inexperienced or hesitant to be like heavy in role playing or improv or whatever when it comes to tabletop. Because that's something that because she plays the dwarf, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Waldorf.
When she came on board, you could definitely see and well, I guess in hindsight, now that you said that, I can see that role she's playing much more clearly, because that's essentially the role I play in our campaign. Is I'm there to help role play, which is weird because I have zero experience at D&D. I just like to be an ass. So when you have DM'd, I guess, much shorter in your tabletop experience, but do you prefer, have you learned to prefer this, or do you still prefer player character?
I guess it kind of depends on what I'm playing. I'm kind of in 3 other campaigns that I'm just being a character in. One of my best friends is campaigning, and this is actually his first time DMing too, and he's made the story so good, and just what he wants us to do. He does a lot of planning, so I kind of want to talk to him about trying to plan my campaign a little bit more, but I love the story that he's bringing us through, so I like being the character, because I guess I'm the kind of person that helps the DM and kind of pushes them along, or at least I try to, or tries to push the other characters into doing something else. But DMing, I like it a lot. I probably just need to, I guess, look into things more, because I'm kind of going way off of just winging it whenever we do a podcast. So I don't know, if I looked into it more, it'd probably be a little better.
But I don't know that's necessarily going into the D&D rule set may not necessarily play to someone that wants to wing it or is winging it as a DM. But I think that, obviously as a DM, and I've never DM'd, I've just talked to a lot of DMs. The story planning is obviously a huge, important process, but I think being able to have the ability to wing it and go on the fly, just enhances your ability to tell a story, and B, it just helps the story where you're not, if Nunu is taking you off your path that you have written and you're trying to get it back to that path, you're derailing the story at that point. If you allow yourself to open it up to, okay, well, we're going to follow Nunu down this path, then, and you kind of improv your story, which it sounds like that's what you're doing. So I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I think that's an aspect you should, while you, I guess, prep more, I think you should also kind of keep that tool at your side, the improv.
Yeah, and I personally, with my experience, just in high school, I used to do, musicals and acting and everything, so I like improving, and I don't know, I kind of enjoy the story that I'm going off of, and kind of throwing things in here and there, and when I don't want them to do something, I have that NPC, Stelly, and I just kind of have her do something and force them to do whatever I need them to do, pretty much.
Oh, that's interesting. You know what? And I'm sure that there's plenty, like, again, in hindsight, now that you've pulled back the curtain, I could probably go back and listen and find those moments because I would never have noticed, like, guessed that. But there's totally like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, because that is another thing that I think is more unique to the podcast that you guys do is there's not, or maybe even D&D in general. I've never, in the 3 sessions that we've been playing with the campaign that I'm in now, and all the podcasts that I listen to, there's never been an NPC character that's been with the party as long as Stelly's been around.
Yeah. It kind of helps me kind of put myself into the campaign as well. Because I like acting
that's a good idea
too. So my friend actually did that for one of our campaigns. It was just me and my boyfriend. So it was a tougher campaign. So he actually made an NPC that kind of followed us around and helped us out a lot. So it was something that I kind of spun off of that. But I really like Stelly a lot. So I think I'm going to keep her around.
Yeah, no, it's a good way because, I mean, DMing, I guess it depends on, again, the person and the personality. Like my buddy who DMs ours, he really enjoys, like, he writes books and stuff, so he's like a storyteller at heart. He, you know, so he doesn't have like an NPC. Plus, there's like a group of 6 or 7 of us or whatever. So you don't need another person in that. But yeah, I honestly think you're the first DM I've listened to and talked to that has like a NPC there at all times that they play. But that's a fascinating. I think that's what I would want to do because I would get bored. I think just telling a story. You know, which is odd because I do fancy myself a storyteller because I write, but I don't think I'm good at it. I think I'm just good at getting from point A to B. So I don't know. But I like it. I think it's a good way to get yourself involved, especially with, I mean, I guess with your NPC, you guys are still sitting at what, 5 or 6 party members?
1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5, and then my NPC would make it 6.
Yeah.
But and also too, because my dad doesn't really have too much experience, and my sister and my brother, it helps because I have the NPC. It helps me be able to push them along when my friend Lisha doesn't push them. So gotcha. It definitely helps me kind of shape my story.
So let's what's your process? You know, you already mentioned that you kind of don't plan too much. But what was your process like starting out as a DM and prepping your story, and like how much work throughout the? Well, let me ask you this first: how do you guys? And because I did not ask your dad this, how do you guys record? Do you actually record like a session every week, or do you sit down and record X amount of hours and then break it up?
We actually meet every week. We set aside Sundays to as kind of like our recording day. So there was a couple Sundays that we weren't able to get together. So we would get together the following Sunday and we would record longer sessions. But in my parents' house, we actually cut off part of our base. Well, not cut off, but my dad has a sound room. So we had like a bunch of foam and stuff in one room. So it's soundproof. But we actually use some sound blankets, and we have 2 couches and a big dining room table and a couple chairs around. And we just put mics on the tables and on stands. So we have a mixer and a bunch of mics, and we just have sound blankets that we kind of put up when we're in that middle space. And we just record there. So we do that every Sunday. I don't think we've never recorded other than Sunday. Sunday's pretty much my dad's free time day because he works a lot, and I also work a lot too. So yeah, that's how we do the Sunday thing. But how I was like kind of creating the campaign, were you gonna ask that? I know.
Well, yeah, and I guess to go along with, so because the way I've known other, like, this, the way we record and the way we play and the way that at least the one other podcast that I listen to, like they tend to record 4 hours at a time. We record for about 4 hours at a time, and we have like a 4 hour, 5 hour game session, and then we meet up like, we don't meet every week, we meet every other month or whatever, and I don't know what the frequency of the other podcasts, but they don't do it every week. So I feel like the prep has got to be a lot different since you're basically prepping, about I'm assuming about an hour or so a week versus, 1 4 hour session every month.
Yeah, it's definitely a little difficult, but I think the reason we do it that way is because we're family. We're like always kind of near each other anyway. I mean, it's a little bit more difficult to get my one friend to join along, so I have to kind of go off of her schedule. But for the most part, we kind of try to set that one time, but we've always just done 1 hour. I know normally when I would do a D&D session, we would just play for 4-6 hours at a time. I don't know. We just started doing the podcast and we only really record for 1 hour, and that's just the session. I think it helps because it kind of takes down the editing that my dad has to do, because he mostly does the editing. Every once in a while, my brother might help him with it. But with just that 1 hour podcast, he doesn't have to break it up into points. So it makes it.
No, I get that. Yeah, that's why we've only released one episode in the last 6 months, because I'm sitting on the other 7 that I have to edit. It's so how do you, like, what's your typical, okay, let me prep the week let me prep the session this week? Or do you have that all prepped already from the beginning?
I don't really. My prepping normally happens after we do a recording. So after we do a recording, I kind of think of where I want it to go for next week. And then that's pretty much all I think about. And then about half an hour before we sit down and press record, I listen to the last few minutes of the previous podcast and kind of refresh my memory on where I want everyone to go. And I just kind of make it happen, I guess.
So it sounds like you got, and again, this is coming from someone who hasn't DM'd. It sounds like you got it kind of easy because you kind of improv it more than anything, as far as like you don't have a lot of prepared because you don't know where they're going to, like, where everyone's going to take you.
Definitely. And I hope I am not offending any DMs, because I understand how much prep comes into making their own campaign and everything. This first started out as pretty much like a random dungeon almost. I've done this many of times with my friends. We would just kind of randomly roll characters, and whoever was DMing would just kind of go off of whatever random thing that they found online or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I pretty much just kind of, I think the first session we had talked about it, but then we came to the recording day, and about 20 minutes before we started recording, I was looking through my phone and looking through my computer to see where I kind of wanted the story to go or how I wanted to start it. And I don't remember what I was looking up, but I think it was something random. I just typed in, I guess, some random starter adventure, and I kind of got some basis of what you could start the story off with. And that's kind of where I started, and then I just kind of played along with that. And every time I do one of the recordings, I start to think of, oh, that was pretty cool that I added that there. Then maybe I'll just have this at the end. That'll work. That makes it, kind of ties everything together. So as everything's being said and done, I'm kind of writing down notes for how I want it to end.
So to expand upon that, do you have and I feel like most DMs do this, but they also do a lot more. Well, I don't. Maybe you do more other than just what you've described already. But they have the whole world, their whole homebrew world built, extensively. So is there more to the world that you kind of have? Maybe it's not written down, but that you just kind of are randomly having mental notes or you're writing down or whatever about like the whole backstory to the world that these characters are in?
Yes, and I'm kind of I guess I don't know if you've probably seen the picture, but I did post a map of kind of the world that all of the characters came from. It was the same world, but it's not the world that they're in during the podcast. They're actually in a kind of a different dimension, and they're trying to get out of it. But the world that they originally came from, I made a map, and I drew it myself and kind of created things on it and just where I wanted everything. But I want to, in the future, go off of that and make more history towards it. I kind of have ideas, but I haven't sat down yet and thought about what I actually wanted to be here or what I wanted the history to be like. So I do look forward to ending this campaign and then starting a new one with the same kind of world. So I guess the world that I have right now is my basis, and I'm probably going to go off that for the next however many years we continue to do this podcast. So it's kind of cool to look forward to. I just have to kind of prep it up and add things as I go on, pretty much.
Well, and so my buddy who DMs and writes his own book series, like I'm heavily involved in like the book side of things, and have like, you know, he writes much quicker than I do, but like I have a list of things and some stuff written down for when I eventually release something for that series. But I help like the world building aspect of whatever it is, you know, D&D or novel or whatever. I feel like even if it's you're not actually releasing anything to the public, that's the most fun part of being some sort of storyteller or creator or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a question. It's kind of a statement.
Yeah, I like having my creation because it's kind of my own creation, the world that I created, and also this kind of different dimension. But just the characters that I've have as NPCs and everything, they definitely have a part to play in the history that has happened before in the world that I'm creating. So I haven't really sat down and wrote anything down yet, though. It's all just in my head right now. So I'm not really a writer. I might have to find someone to actually write it down for me, though.
Well, and I'll have to find the link for you and send it to you. But there's this really great online tool that basically is for people that do homebrew campaigns and create their own worlds and stuff. And it's just kind of a fancy way to write everything down, where it basically mimics like a player handbook.
Oh.
As far as like what the paper looks like, and you can, if you find the how to style it, it's got its own like unique styling code, but you can style it so it looks kind of like the pages within a player handbook. Which I haven't really used because I'm not a DM, but I know a couple DMs that use it, and it's there's no real benefit to it except that it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
So I'll have to send that to you. Maybe it will make you want to write it down or at least type it down. That's something I've learned as I used to be in every aspect of entertainment or whatever. I used to be a very diehard, like, quote unquote old school fan, meaning like if I'm going to write, I'm not going to type on a computer. I'm going to write in a notebook and then I'll type it into a computer. If I'm going to read a book, I'm going to read a book. I'm not going to read an ebook. If I'm going to read a comic book, I want to feel the pages. I want to look at the pictures. I'm not going to read an e-comic book. I want to buy a movie. I'm not going to download it. I'm going to buy music. I'm not going to download it. And I've since like I don't write it. I don't physically write anymore. It's because it's someone that like when, and I guess you might know this at 22, but especially at 32, when you are working a full-time job and have a family and you're doing podcasting and you're doing whatever it is beyond the writing, I don't have time to sit there and write and then go back to it later and figure out what I wrote down because I can't read it and then type it out again. So yeah, the typing directly into like a computer, and I can do that when I'm at work. Well, yeah, no one I know at work listens to this. I can do that when I'm at work, or even if I'm on my lunch break. Like I can sit there at my lunch break, or I can take a 5-minute break instead of going, because I don't smoke anymore. So like everyone else goes out to smoke, I can take 5 minutes and sit there and write for like a quick little break, and it helps like distract my mind from everything else that's going on. So yeah, I think typing down things has been a help for at least me as a storyteller. But let's okay, so I want to wrap up in a couple minutes because it's one of the rare times I'm getting sleepy and I have to I'm going camping this weekend. So
we'll have fun.
yes. So let's talk about the Philadelphia Podcast Festival a little bit. We are in Philly Podcast Month, Philly Podcast Fest Month. And you guys are going to be performing your show live.
Yes.
So whose idea was this? I don't think I got into this with your dad. Whose idea was to like take it to the Philly Podcast Fest?
Well, my dad's been looking into things and talking to a lot of people on Twitter or just anything in general. So he basically found it and kind of wanted to go into it. I think he started talking to one of the people that kind of hosts the Philly podcast or podcast, and he came up to me one day and was like, "So, what do you think about recording live at the Podfest?" And I just thought it was pretty cool. He actually wanted to cosplay our characters, but I don't know if we'll be able to do that. But we might do little things here and there. That'll be cool to visually see. Mm-hmm. But we're not really going to continue on with our story. We actually want to, during the festival, interact with a lot of the people that are going to be there. So I don't want to get...
Obviously.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. But our characters are going to all be there, and they're going to meet up with some random people that we're going to actually generate, and the people in the crowd are going to be able to randomly pick one of the randomly generated characters that we have and either fight or interact with one of our other characters. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a neat way to get the crowd involved. And it's fun. It would be great if you guys could cosplay, because like that's a very showy thing to do. And I've been talking to other Philly podcast people who are going to be at the place, and so my show is going to be at Tattooed Moms on Sunday. And I was in the city on Monday to guest on another podcast, and also to look at Tattooed Moms. So I was like, well, I've never been here. Let me see what I'm getting myself into. And so instantly, as soon as I walked in, I was like, all right, well, that idea is not going to work. And because I come from a world of, like, I used to wrestle, like WWE style wrestling. And so I'm a very, like, if I'm going to put on a show, I'm going to put on a show. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, this is like, maybe live podcasts aren't supposed to be the venue to do this in. But I'm still moving forward with some of the ideas that I have, and I've also thought of like other live shows that I want to do and different ideas. But I think like for me, like listening to I've listened to a couple live podcasts, and unless they're like a big name in the podcasting world, they can kind of just, from a listener standpoint, it sounds like I'm listening to the same thing. So being in the crowd, what's my hook for being in the crowd?
Yeah.
So doing stuff where you're interacting with the crowd, or if you're doing something to like really kind of pump the crowd up, or doing something visual, even though it's an audio medium. I think you can try. You have to play to both worlds, and but if you're including the people into the game, that's a great way to pump up the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people don't play D&D and everything, but we still want to kind of get them into the game a little bit. So it'll be it'll be kind of dumbed down, so it's a lot easier. Not like a whole big character sheet or anything like that, and but it'll be nice and easy and simple. I still haven't figured out the little stuff here and there with what we're gonna do, but I have a general idea of how it's gonna work. The hardest thing I think is gonna be because I think we have to bring our own recording stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, at the comic store?
Yeah,
Oh.
at least that's what my dad has kind of said. I think he has to look more into it, but
Yeah, you should look more into that because
Yeah.
I know at Tattoo Moms we don't have to, and maybe I'll cut this stuff out. But yeah, I definitely have him check on that because, yeah, have him email the guy Nate or Tegan, I think
Okay.
that's her name, and because that, I mean, it only sounds strange because I don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, I know my dad is really, 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 really picky on recording. I
Okay,
don't know
well, then
if he's talked to you about it before or.
Yeah, no, I think that came up. I think that did come up. And that might, like, he may have asked if he can bring his own stuff, and they probably said yes.
Yeah.
Because I've asked minor questions, and the Nate and God, I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but I think it's Tegan. I should just open up my email and look. But they run the podcast fest, and I mean, as long as I've been doing podcasts, which is 9 years is what I factored it out to be. It's been 9 years since I started.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. I got in right as it got became a thing.
Yeah.
And just varying degrees of success. Obviously, I'm not on show 900, so but the interview, and I don't really like to call it an interview show because it's more of a conversation, but this type of show has like instantly become like my favorite thing to do because I don't have to rely on someone to like schedule, like to meet for a co-host. I can just kind of rely on my own schedule and my guest schedule, and I can rearrange guests if I need to. So this works out really nice to where the show, like, there's no one I have to rely on, basically. So I finally, after 9 years, I finally found the show that I like to do. But I've never been part of the podcast fest before. Like, they've, this is their 4th year, I believe. And like, I just never, like the first year that it happened, I was like, how am I not part of this? And so I'm really excited for it. Like, I can't wait to be part of it this year. It's going to be really exciting. I'm planning on being at the comic shop on Saturday. Do you know the date and time?
We're going to be there. I'm pretty sure our time is 4:00 on Saturday.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the 20th.
August 20th, 4 p.m.
is what we're showing, yes.
At the, what's the comic store? Amalgam Comics and Coffee House.
Okay.
I think it's on Frankfurt. I'm not sure the address. If you go to phillypodfest.com, you'll see it. You'll see the schedule, the full schedule. That's day 2 of the Philly Podfest. And there's going to be shows, I think, at both locations that day. I'm bringing my son with me on Saturday, so I'll be at the comic book store for a little bit to check out your live show. I'm excited to see what you guys have to do. And then make sure you come check out me live at Everything is Awesome on August 21st at 2 p.m. as part of the Philly Podfest for a little shameless self-promotion. So are you, I guess it all depends on how this goes, but are you looking forward to maybe doing more and more live events?
Yeah, definitely. I have to kind of work my way into interacting a little bit more, but I love meeting people generally, and my dad's a really big kind of, he likes to, I don't know.
He's a people person.
Yeah, generally speaking. So, yeah, he likes to tell people about things that he does. So from just starting the podcast, maybe, a couple months ago, I love telling people about it. So I can't wait to do the live show and interact with more people.
Well, and to be fair, when you're in your 20s, you love to tell everybody about everything you do. When I wrestled in my 20s, I told everyone about it. I hung flyers up at work. Now at 32, I'm like, do I want my work people to know that I'm going to do something pretty silly and stupid? I'm telling my old coworkers from last year, but I'm pretty sure I'm not letting my coworkers know, hey, come watch me be an asshole. So, but it is an exciting. This is kind of like how I envision my show. Like this is what I've always wanted to do. Like kind of a live performance / improv. So like I'm really it's I think it's gonna be a good time all around. Like the schedule, I can't believe we have this many talented shows in Philadelphia. There's like I think over 30 podcasts going to be there between the 2 weekends.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, like the two that stand out is I don't think Stark Raven Mad's going to be there this year. But they're kind of like a big deal for a Game of Thrones podcast. And the other one that I think is going to be there again this year, and I have the internet in front of me, I'm not using it, but I haven't listened to them yet, but Overdue, which is like a book podcast. They talk about, to the best of my knowledge, like just like books that you should be reading. Okay. And they stick out, like the reason like I think it's really cool that they're there is they're part of this podcast network called HeadGum, which was founded by, and I don't know if you may know Jake and Amir from College Humor.
I do not know.
Okay, so wow.
Oh wait! No, I do. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, Jake and Amir from College Humor. They left College Humor and they started like their own thing. And one of the things that they're doing is a podcast, and then they eventually formed their own podcast network. And like I wouldn't say they're necessarily a podcast that I admire because they don't do the same podcast, but they're definitely like entertainers I admire. Like I'm still trying to develop a web series that's kind of pays homage to what they did on College Humor. And so I was like, oh my God, there's a Philadelphia podcast that's part of their podcast network. That's amazing. And that's just me. Like I fan out over little podcast things like that, but I'm a podcaster at heart.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I definitely can't wait for that weekend to come. I can't wait to see a bunch of different podcasters and even just recording our live show. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a cool experience, and it looks like there's like there's a lot of returning shows, and there's also a lot of new shows. And it's cool that it's kind of growing. I'm hoping that this like kind of for us. Everything is awesome. It turns into like, all right, well now I'm going to start doing my show live. I'd love to do it 6 times a year, like an average of every other month. Like it would just be, it would be a lot of fun, but it's the storyteller / the showman in me that like, I just want to get on stage and do wacky crap. Which would I imagine would be like the same for, I mean, at least it sounds like you and your dad that kind of love to, do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And go live. So, and maybe even your younger sister.
Oh, she's really good.
So and on a final note, because I made mention of this in the episode with your dad, I really love the way that character she plays, Rashandala, is treated. Like, I love that it's not poking fun at someone with special needs. It's kind of like, because that's what she is, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and I love that it's just, I don't know, it's not making fun of, it's kind of embracing, I think, is how I view it when I listen to it.
Yeah.
It's
just definitely, it's how she made her character. And I think she went into way more detail with our character episode where they kind of explain their background and everything. But she used to be like a normal person. And then she had this trauma that happened to her and she lost her memory. So she kind of, it just kind of happened to her, and that's just how she is now. So.
Yeah, I like I said, I just, it's something that could have been handled really, really bad, and it's not. Like, it's handled really, really well. So that's props to everyone involved in that process of bringing the character to life, and the other characters kind of embracing it and not judging or making fun of necessarily, that, or at least not for that reason.
No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So. It was just something that, like, as listening to the episodes gone on and on, it stuck out as something like kind of really cool and like it's funny and serious at the same time, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I'm rambling now. Anyway, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for letting me be here. It was awesome.
Yes. Well, that is the point of the show. It's in the title. So if you want to, before we let you go, throw out any plugs besides what we've already talked about. Throw them out.
No, just come and listen to Steel Empire if you haven't, and we'll see you guys at the Philly Podfest.
Yes, in a couple of weeks. For Everything is Awesome. Well, you know what? I'm gonna do a little. This is where I can tell you don't know how to podcasting real well yet. Make sure you follow them on Twitter at Steel Empire. Wait, I get the two confused.
At
right?
Empire Steel.
At Empire Steel. On Twitter, it's at Empire Steel. And follow them on Twitter.
We have a Facebook page too. It's if you search Steel Empire or Steel Pods, it comes up. And you can email us as well at pods, PODS, at Steel Empire, STEELE for entertainment, empire.com. Do you like that? My dad does that all the time.
When the first week that he did that, I was like, oh man, like, come. I was like, I was like, not in a bad, way, just kind of like, that's so cheesy. It's great. Like, I love it.
It's the only reason we're doing that is because it's weird that Steel is spelled with an E at the end. That's just how, because it's actually a name that we have in our family, and it's STEELE. So that's just how it's spelled, but just all of it together, because there's two E's and then two E's next to Steel and then Empire. So we just kind of put that in there just to help other people to kind of add that in. So,
but I did, like, the first time he said it on the podcast, like, it was like, oh man, like, not like, it was just like, oh, I'm almost embarrassed, but it's so cheesy. Like, it's one of those things where I mean, it's just so cheesy. I love it. And I forget there was one, like, the first episode that I don't know if it was you or your sister or somebody else. Like, they said it instead of him.
Yeah, I think it was my sister.
And I was like, oh my god, like, it sounds like she's making fun of him. It was good though. I like it. And then what's the website they can find the show at?
You can find it at Magic, or A Quest for Magic and Steele, or magicandsteele.com, I think, or...
it's magicandsteele.com.
Yeah, or you can look up steelempire.com. We have all of our links there as well.
And then while you're going on iTunes to subscribe to the show, you probably should leave a 5-star review.
Yeah.
And the way I go about it, and maybe I'll speak for my show, because after you're done subscribing and reviewing their show, you can go to iTunes, look for Everything is Awesome, subscribe, rate the show. For me, always 5-star reviews. That's, you have to do that. You can hate the show, as far as I'm concerned. You can tell me I'm a dick. You can just blast the show, put it on blast, and I'll read it on air. Just give it a 5-star review. That's all I'm asking. And another way to support this show, Everything is Awesome, while I'm throwing out self-plugs, is you can go to patreon.com/awesomepodcast. That's patreon.com/awesomepodcast. If you want to, it's just another way to support the show. We just launched it, so check that out. Again, Amara, did I say that right?
Amara.
Damn it! I'll get it. I'll not get it right.
No,
probably the
it's
day
okay.
of the press either.
Nobody gets it right, so it's fine.
It took me 7 times to say the comic book store name correct, so I'm terrible at names. Anyway, again, thank you for being on the show. Make sure you check out her podcast, A Quest for Magic and Steele, on iTunes and all the interwebs and whatnot, wherever you will listen to podcasts. For Everything is Awesome, I'm your host, Kev, and we'll catch you next time right here, only on awesomepodcast.com.